Michael Gove, who, I don't know what his title is in government now, I don't know what his role is.
He's the Minister for Waste and Space.
Minister of Waste and Space. He's, for some reason, in that role, it was given to him to define extremism for the government. You know, I'm glad to see the spending time. Our taxpayers' money valuable here. So he defined extremism, and I can't remember what the definition was. It was some nebulous statement he made. Then he started naming extremist groups that are a threat to this country.
Yeah.
And the first two groups he named were not Islamic extremist groups, which I regard as the greatest threat to this country, but white right-wing groups that I've never heard of, basically. And I thought I'd written down the names of these two groups, so I haven't written them down. But they're basically two groups that I've never heard of before.
Yeah.
And then after that, he then started naming a chain of then Islamic extremist groups. Now, my issue with this is those two groups he named first, and I don't know what they're like, and I don't know what their politics are like, and I suspect they're tiny groups anyway. The reason when I flew back from Portugal, when I flew out to Portugal, it took me half an hour to get through securities not because of them, but because of Islamic extremists. Yeah. Because of actions taken by terrorist organisations, Islamic terrorist organisations that over the years have done things like 9/11, have blown things up, have all suicide vests, all those things. Yeah. Most of those are perpetrated, unless I'm wrong in my stats here, but I think I'm right, by extreme Islamic organisations, of which there are many in this country. The things that prevent, the reason they have massive concrete pillars around Westminster, lots of places now, and at airports, is because of Islamic extremism or examples of those, and they're trying to prevent those happening again. I'm not aware of anything, and maybe you can enlighten me, Nick, of anything that these two groups, supposedly right-wing groups, have done that would require them to be at the top of the list. Are you aware of something that I'm not aware of?
No, my memory, there's only been two far-right terrorist attacks that I can think of in the last 20, 30 years. One was the killing of Joe Cox, the MP, during the Brexit referendum, which was horrific. He is believed to have shouted Britain first as he stabbed her or shot her, whatever he did. And the other one was a guy who drove to a mosque in a van and drove into someone coming out of the mosque. They're the only two I know of. Both of them I condemn. Don't see anyone being injured. But then when we look at radical Islam, we're looking at the bombings in London on the tube station, on the bus. We're looking at 9/11 in America. We're looking at the beheading of a soldier in London, Lee Rigby. We're looking at stuff all the time.
We're looking at the Manchester bombing.
How did I forget the Manchester bombing?
Yeah.
I heard the bomb that night.
Yeah.
I lived just down the road from there. I heard it. I was in bed. I'd gone to bed early. I heard it and went, oh, what's that? Rolled over and went back to sleep. If I'd have known what gone on, I'd have gone out, I'd have helped, but I just slept through it. You hear bang in the 6 all the time. Yeah. You're right, that's why we have around the town hall, that's why we have the metal posts and the concrete.
That's why you can't go to a concert or anything now with a bag bigger than a certain size. You stop
can't have liquids.
Security metal detectors everywhere you go.
Yeah. But 30 years ago we had the same problem, and it was Irish terrorists.
Correct.
So terrorists do change. At the moment we're going through a phase of Islamic terrorists, and once they've been beaten, there'll be other terrorists. The next threat we got will be eco-green terrorists. They were highlighted by the Americans and by the British Secret Service, those the spies, 20 years ago, before 9/11, as this is the next terrorist issues we're going to face, will be the green issue. Killing people for using too much petrol, a bit like Extinction Rebellion, but killing people.
Really?
But then we had 9/11 and Islam took over as the terrorist threat. But once we've dealt with that, it'll be the green issue that comes back, and it looks like they could be taking lives next time.
And this is to do with by killing you, we're preventing climate change.
By killing you, we're going to save the world.
Right.
So that's the issue we're facing at the moment, is that the reason why Gove mentioned the two white far-right groups first is the same reason why Rishi Sunak outside 10 Downing Street was talking about far-right when he was talking about Islamist terrorists. Because in our country now, you've got to hedge your bets. Because if you just look at someone who's brown without saying, and white people are bad as well, white people are also bad, your class as a racist. What that does is that isolates and annoys a vast part of the population by saying, here we go again. We're the baddies again. We're killing no one, but we're also the baddies. It also then legitimises the other terrorists, because people in their community will go, well, that's why we've got armed response. That's why we're doing this terrorism, because we're scared of the far-right lunatics that the government's always talking about.
Yeah.
And they must be really good because they're always under the radar.
Yeah.
No one knows who they are because they're a lot smarter than us. We're just playing into this all the time.
Yeah, because people are... my view on that is, when I saw that, I just thought exactly what you thought. Most people would look at that, certainly most white people in this country would look at that and say, oh my God, this is pathetic, isn't it? Because they'll never have heard of those organisations before.
Now we've just advertised them as well.
Yeah,
we've now given them an advertisement where we need to not speak about these tiny far-right groups, because they're not doing anything, they're not killing anybody. Yeah. So we should ignore them, and they'll just end up being five people.
But you actually promote them by
promoting them. Yeah.
But it's just so clunky. It's just so clunky. And I would imagine, I don't know anything about these groups, but I imagine they're no threat to anybody in this country, particularly.
There may be a threat to one or two people, like Muslim people or black people or Jews. There might be a slight threat to some people, but they're not a threat when you compare it to radical Islam. Yeah. Or when you compare it to the IRA 30 years ago. Yeah. They're not a threat on that level.
Well, I guess the question I'd ask you then, can you name them?
No.
No, so they're not. Because I think if they were a real terrorist threat, you're a very well-read man, Nick, so I think if they were a real threat, you'd know about them. You've never heard of them before. They might as well have included Lawrence Fox in that list.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we've got that bad now about far-right white racism, that if you stick stickers on lampposts, you're going to get 2 years in jail. You read about that last week, 2 weeks ago.
If you stick what on the lamppost?
Stickers. This guy was walking around where he lived putting stickers on lampposts.
Oh yes.
Got arrested. Some of the stickers said white lives matter, white people will be a minority in this country by 2050. That was the most controversial one. All the rest I don't think were controversial at all. That was the only one you could actually argue might be a bit controversial. But he said,
why is that controversial?
That's what I mean. It's hard. That's the only one you could argue that might be controversial. Yeah. But I don't think it is. But you could argue that one. And got 2 years in jail.
For what?
For creating racial division, incitement to violence, because these stickers...
Please tell me there's some sort of protest or some sort of, what's it called, fundraising to get him
No,
out.
because he was connected to what they call the far-right group, but he was arrested for putting stickers on lampposts.
Yeah, but...
I know. The government's constantly looking... The government really want a far-right enemy, because it'll make them feel better when they're tackling the radical Muslims, that we've also got a far-right enemy as well. Yeah. Does that exist?
Yeah. Well, I think we have got a far-right enemy, which is radical Islam, because I don't see why any of the things they're not doing couldn't be regarded as far-right.
Because they're brown. Most of them are brown. So they're looking for far-right white terrorists. Yeah. As well as trying to tackle...
But they're almost saying, here's these far-right white groups, well, terrible, and here's the Islamic... But actually, they're all in the same pile over here, aren't they? Because Islamic terrorists, the behaviours, the things they believe in, the things they profess, are to the extreme.
Far-right, yeah.
But nobody ever seems to say that, do they?
No.
I never heard Sadiq Khan saying, these far-right Islamic terrorists need to be stopped. No. But that's what they are. Yeah. Their views are horrifically to the right in terms of what they want to do to people and their behaviours. So that's another thing that is really irritating, this label of far right.
Yeah, anybody right of Jeremy Corbyn is far right.
Yeah, Correct.
Basically, everyone's far right.
Yeah.
Everyone's far right.
Except for the Muslims.
But again, going back to Gove, we're not tackling the real issue because we're too scared to tackle the real issue. It's exactly the same why we don't tackle knife crime. Because to tackle knife crime, you're going to have to disproportionately target young black men who in the police or government actively want to do that and ruin their career and be called racist. So rather than doing their job, just let them stab each other to death and die in pools of their own blood. That's better than me ruining my career over this. And that's exactly the same here. Rather than us tackling radical Islam and getting to the root of it and driving it out and supporting the Muslim community to also drive out these radicals from their community, let's not do anything and let's just call people far right white racists, and in which case we'll let these people blow more kids up at arenas and we'll sing Don't Look Back in Anger again. We've discussed this before. It's political cowardice. If you like that video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell and comment. And if you like what I'm saying about running for Mayor of Greater Manchester, then stick around. Tell your family, tell your friends. The only way I'm going to have a chance of winning is a grassroots movement. So be part of that movement and hit that bell. Thanks.